Kwakwala, also known as Kwakiutl, is the indigenous language spoken by the Kwakwaka'wakw. It belongs to the Wakashan language family. There are fewer than 200 fluent Kwakwala speakers today, which amounts to 3% of the Kwakwaka'wakw population. Because of the small number of speakers, the fact that very few, if any, children learn Kwakwala as a first language, and that most speakers are elders, its long-term viability is in question. However, interest from many Kwakwaka'wakw in preserving the language and a number of revitalization projects are countervailing pressures which may extend the viability of the language. Dialects. The ethnonym Kwakwaka'wakw means speakers of Kwakwala, effectively defining an ethnic connection between different tribes by reference to a shared language. However, the Kwakwala spoken by each tribe exhibits dialectal differences, which may be quite significant in some cases. There are four major unambiguous dialects of Kwakwala: Kwak'wala, Nak'wala, Guc'ala, and T'lat'lasikwala. In addition to those dialects, there are also Kwakwaka'wakw tribes that speak Likwala. Likwala has sometimes been considered to be a dialect of Kwakwala and sometimes a separate language. The standard orthography for Likwala is quite different from the most widely used orthography for Kwakwala, which tends to widen the apparent differences between Likwala and Kwakwala. Phonology. Kwakwala phonology exhibits many traits of the Northwest Coast's Sprachbund, of which it is a part. They include a large phonemic inventory with a very rich array of consonantal contrasts and relatively few vowels, frequent use of a reduced vowel, contrastively glottalized sonorant consonants, the existence of adjectives at all places of articulation, and the existence of lateral affricates. The vowels of Kwakwala are a, e, I, o, u, e. There is a phonemic length distinction as well. However, not all vowels exist in both long and short versions. The phonemic status of some of the vowels in question is relatively unclear, as especially evident in the case of a and e. They often interchange in different instances of the same stem or suffix, depending on the phonological content. Presents some cases of complementary distribution between a and e, but concludes that those vowels must be underlyingly distinct in some other cases. Analyzes all vowels other than e and a as derived rather than underlying: I from, ej, u from, u, e from, ej, et, and o from, ewa. The consonantal inventory of Kwakwala includes a three-way contrast in plosives, voice, and adjective. There is an extensive series of distinctions between rounded and non-rounded consonants in the dorsal region. Notably, there are no velar consonants without secondary articulation. They are all either palatalized or labialized. The consonants are shown in the following table. Stress placement depends on syllable weight. A syllable is heavy if it has a long vowel or a Moraic coda, otherwise it is light. A Moraic coda is a non-glottalized sonorant. Thus, pen is a heavy syllable, while pet is light. If the word has any heavy syllables, primary stress falls on the leftmost heavy syllable. Otherwise, primary stress falls on the rightmost syllable. Secondary stress also occurs, but its distribution is less well understood. According to secondary stress falls on the second syllable following the primary stress and iteratively thereafter on every second syllable. This statement may be amended to take into account the observation of that epenthetic vowels never bear stress, including secondary stress, and they seem to be invisible when syllables accounted for the assignment of secondary stress. Kwakwala appears to have an otherwise unattested pattern of repair strategies for coda condition violations. Underlyingly voiced consonants are devoiced word finally but surface faithfully with following epenthesis when their word internal. Glottalized consonants remain glottalized when word final but surface with a following epenthetic vowel when their word internal. Morphophonology. Kwak'wala has a rich morphological system which, like other Wakashan languages, is entirely suffixing. Like other Wakashan languages, Kwak'wala morphology is notable for the complex effects that certain suffixes trigger or correlate within the stems to which they affix. There are two basic categories of changes associated with suffixes: fortition or lenition of a stem final consonant and expansion of stem material through vowel lengthening or reduplication. Hardening and weakening. Suffixes fall into three classes according to the behavior: neutral, weakening, and hardening. Following the Boasian orthographic tradition, the suffix types are indicated by a symbol preceding the suffix equals or, respectively. Weakening and hardening suffixes alter the stem to which they are attached by changing the features of the stem final consonant. Weakening suffixes trigger a kind of lenition. Plain voiceless stops and affricates are changed to the voiced equivalent. The behavior of fricatives is somewhat more erratic. Per second weakens to or, depending on the root, a classification apparently arbitrary. X weakens to. Both X and Guy weaken to, but Guy does not change in a weakening context. L voices when weakened, surfacing as sonants weaken by becoming glottalized. In addition to the somewhat unpredictable set of changes, the patterns involved in weakening are further complicated by the fact that some suffixes weaken stops but do not affect fricatives. Bose lists 11 suffixes weakening stops and affricates but not fricatives. These suffixes are indicated by the notation as seen in the following list. S continuously, EI star mouth opening, to talk about, X are away, tell we to G, to do something while doing something else, weakens per second. L continuing motion in a definite direction, weakens. K Q S atlela, to go attend, to be on the way. Kayak place where there are many, does not weaken per second. Kais canoe, kaisike, in front of house. Body mountain, kai tlej at by force, tl moving on water. Hardening suffixes trigger a kind of fortition. Stem final plain stops or affricates as sonants become glottalized. As with weakening suffixes, the hardening patterns of fricatives are less predictable. Per second hardens to or X hardens to. Both X and Chi harden to, while Chi in a hardening context surfaces with an additional following glottal stop. L hardens to, in keeping with the avoidance of laryngeally marked non-final coders. Weakening and hardening often trigger epenthesis, yielding a schwa between the stem and suffix. The table below illustrates how various roots weaken and harden. Some stems with underlying final voice stops or glottalized segments are attested with hardening and weakening suffixes. However, they are too infrequent to give generalizations for how they behave in those contexts. Stem expansion. In addition to fortition and lengthening, suffixes may also be associated with lengthening or reduplication effects on the stems which precede them. Distinguishes 7 classes of suffix, which all have different effects on some of the 20 possible root shapes which he identifies. Key: the chart follows the one given in, with a few alterations. Root shapes refer to an initial consonant C, a nuclear C or a full vowel V, and final consonants including plain voiceless obstruents. Voiced obstruents, glides, are the sonants and glottalized versions of each of T and R. Cells show the effect of suffixes belonging to the various classes on roots or stems of various shapes. Equals indicates that the suffix leaves the stem unchanged. indicates that the suffix triggers vowel lengthening in the stem. A cell with a vowel indicates that the stem vowel is replaced with the vowel in the cell. Several symbols occurring together with plus in the middle indicates that reduplication occurs. The symbols on each side of plus indicate the shape of each syllable of the reduplicative stem. For example, class 7 suffix is added to C1 roots trigger reduplication on the pattern plus equals, which means that the reduplicative stem has two syllables, with the first syllable long and the second syllable preserving the length of the original stem, indicates a short copy. Thus a 6a suffix on AD root will produce a reduplicative stem, with the second syllable being short and the first syllable having a nucleus A. C refers to one of the stem consonants. Stress marks show the location of primary stress in the suffixed form. In non-reduplicative forms, they indicate that the stem itself bears stress. In reduplicative forms, stress marks indicate which stem syllable bears stress. When no stress mark is included, stress assignment follows the regular pattern for Kwakwala stress. Cells with multiple options are given as in the original chart. It is not clear whether the optionality is systematic in any way. A few symbols whose meaning is unclear have been retained directly, as given in Boas. These include V and V. The symbol corresponds to a special symbol in the original chart. Its meaning is also unclear. A few corrections to the original chart are made in the version above. Class 2 suffixes are listed in this chart as all i.e. lengthening all stems. However, all the Class 2 suffixes described by Boas which productively apply to roots of type B or C leave stems unchanged rather than triggering lengthening. This also adheres to the phonotactics of Kwakwala, which do not allow super-heavy syllables of the type which would be created by lengthening these stems. Therefore, the chart above treats Class 2 suffixes as causing no change in roots of these types. Additionally, several forms in the original chart have in place of plus in reduplicative forms. They are taken as errors here and corrected in the chart above. Root classes C2 and C3 are included in this chart as they are included in his chart even though there are no known roots belonging to these classes. Root class B3 is included with the changes noted in the original chart although states that there are no known roots of this type. An example of a suffix that triggers stem changes is exclusively, real, rarely, just, only, common, which belongs to class 3F. Its effect on roots of various shapes is shown in the following table. Other word formation processes. In addition to suffix-driven reduplication, word formation may also involve reduplication not tied to any suffix. There are at least two reduplication patterns. Morphosyntax. Expansion of stems through suffixation is a central feature of the language, which transforms a relatively small lexicon of roots into a large and precise vocabulary. Different linguistic analyses have grouped these suffixes into classes in various ways, including formative versus incremental and governing versus restrictive. Rejects these morphosyntactic classifications and divides suffixes into various classes based mainly on semantic criteria. Nevertheless, there are morphosyntactic facts that distinguish classes of suffixes, including suffix ordering and the existence of paradigms for certain suffix types. At a minimum, there is sufficient evidence from syntax and phonology to distinguish between stem-forming suffixes and inflectional suffixes. The classes are comparable to the distinction between derivational and inflectional morphology, although they are not necessarily homologous with them. Stem-forming suffixes. The suffixes in Kwakwaka'wala can be grouped into at least 19 different classes, principally on semantic grounds. In the order given by Bose, the classes correspond generally but not completely to the order in which these suffixes appear within a word. 1. General locatives, e.g. equals axar away equals dzu on a flat object. 2. Special locatives, e.g. stu round opening eye door equals is open space bottom of sea world beach in body. 3. Special locatives referring to body parts, e.g. pella throat, IQ in mind. 4. Limitations of form, generally used with numerals e.g. equals UK human beings, TSAQ long. 5. Temporal suffixes, e.g. exid recent past, ajadzual used to be, to do. 6. Suffixes creating a transitive verb, e.g. a, which turns a static or intransitive verb or a noun into a transitive verb. Cf. I'm Kai watertight and Kai to make watertight, and Yasik tallow and Yasik to put tallow on. 7. Aspect, e.g. est continuously, alert to be in the position of performing an act. 8. Plurality, i.e. x dark I. 9. Mode, e.g. u, hypothetical, x exhortative. 10. Passive, e.g. equals m, passive of verbs with instrumental l, passive of verbs expressing sensations and mental actions, also sensations produced by outer actions. 11. Restriction of subject, e.g. sanala, some, arman qla, some. 12. Nominal suffixes, e.g. enkai, season equals id, the one by whom one is owned as. 13. Verbal suffixes, e.g. equals alasem, to dive in at troubles, bula, to pretend. 14. Adverbal, adjectival suffixes, e.g. k as real, really, dz die, large. 15. Source of information, e.g. l, it is said, n in a dream. 16. Degree of certainty, e.g. in m, perhaps, dza emphatic certainty. 17. Conjunctions, e.g. m, referring to a previous subject of conversation, a narrative, ta, but, on his part. 18. Emotional attitudes, e.g. adel, astonishing, ni sdl, o if. 19. Auxiliary suffixes, e.g. l, motion without cessation, away, m, plural of locative suffixes. Inflectional suffixes. There are two major types of inflectional suffixes in Kwakwaka'wala. Verbal suffixes that modify a predicate, and nominal clitics, which may agree with a noun present in the sentence, or may be entirely pronominal. The verbal inflection, a typologically notable feature of Kwakwaka'wala, is the distinction made in verbal conjugation between visible and invisible subjects. A distinction is also made between subjects that are near the listener and those that are far. The verb paradigm fala, to go, illustrates these properties. Nominal inflection, an entity can be present in a sentence in one of three ways: as a full overt noun, as a pronoun, or without any overt exponent. In each case, the entity will also be represented by an agreement clitic. If the entity takes the form of a noun, a pronoun, the clitic will be from the prenominal set. If the entity has no overt exponent, a pronominal clitic will be used. Clitics always precede the nominal with which they agree, which violates the generalization that Kwakwaka'wala affixes are always suffixing. However, the clitic always forms a phonological word with the preceding word rather than the nominal, with the result that the suffixing generalization is always true as far as the phonology is concerned. Verbal suffixes are shown in the following table, because first and second person entities are always deictically accessible. There is no distinction between demonstrative and non-demonstrative clitics. However, third-person clitics are distinguished in this way. As with verbal inflection, agreement clitics distinguish entities that are near and far and entities that are visible and invisible. Pronominal demonstrative clitics are shown in the following table. Prenominal demonstrative clitics do not distinguish between visible and invisible entities. They are divided into two classes: consonantal forms and vocalic forms. Another set of suffixes is used to simultaneously indicate the subject and object instrument, as shown in the following tables. In the preceding table, forms with a first-person object do not use a verbal suffix. Rather, they use a periphrastic auxiliary form of the verb to come. The auxiliary precedes the main verb in the sentence. Suffixation is also used for genitive constructions. These suffixes can be either prenominal, pronominal or postnominal. First-person genitives allow either form. Third-person genitives observe a robust differentiation between those cases in which the subject and possessor of the same entity and those in which they are not. In the former case, the instrumental suffix s is added to the prenominal genitive marker, and the possessed noun take the postnominal demonstrative genitive ending. In the latter case, the instrumental s attaches to the postnominal genitive ending on the possessed noun, and a prenominal suffix remains unchanged. The following table shows genitive suffixes for first and second-person possessors. Prenominal forms include a distinction between first and second person, while the distinction in postnominal forms is made by adding the pronominal, the verbal inflection for the appropriate person. Genitive suffixes with a third-person possessor are shown in the following table. Prenominal forms for the objective and instrumental are formed by suffixing the prenominal forms given above to chi or s, respectively. Independent pronouns also exist in Kwak'wala. Pronouns have verbal and nominal forms. Verbal forms inflect like other verbs. Nominal forms occur in subject, object, and instrumental forms. The full set of pronouns is shown in the following table. Object forms are clearly related to to come, and to go. Syntax Kwak'wala formally distinguishes only three classes of words: predicates, substantives, particles, and exclamatory forms. Nouns and verbs are distinguished mainly by syntactic context. Thus, the bare form k as sit is a verb combined with an article like particle. It serves as a noun, jak as the one who sits. A minimal sentence consists of a predicate. Although that is syntactically simple, it is not necessarily semantically impoverished. The rich morphological system of Kwak'wala allows the expression of many features in a single predicate. L, I shall try to get you to be my wife. Laludant lasik, I have this one for my husband. In sentences with greater syntactic complexity, word order is identical to the order in which inflectional morphemes are added to a stem. Stem, predicate, subject, direct object, instrument, direct object. A number of clitics are used to mark agreement with nouns, including clitics for definiteness, deixis and case. Clitics are positioned at the left edge of the noun they agree with but lean phonologically to the left. The result is a systematic mismatch between syntactic and phonological constituent structure such that on the surface, each prenominal word appears to be inflected to agree with the following noun. That can be seen in the preceding example. The sentence initial predicate Kwakiutl includes a clitic ida, which belongs together with the nominal bionymic ia in terms of syntactical constituency. The nominal, in turn, includes a clitic chi syntactically connected to the following noun, and so on. Orthography, word lists and some documentation of Kwak'wala were created from the early period of contact with Europeans in the 18th century, but a systematic attempt to record the language did not occur before the work of Franz Boers in the late 19th and early 20th century. Over time, Boers developed a systematic orthography for documentation of Kwakwala, which captured almost all of the important distinctions in the language. Although the Boasian orthography was able to capture almost all of the important features of Kwakwala, it was difficult for Kwakwala speakers to use. It was impossible to write with a standard typewriter due to its abundant use of special symbols, and it used some standard letters very differently from English orthography, which was familiar to many Kwakwaka'wakw. A practical orthography, developed by the Kwakwaka'wakw linguist David Grubb, became the standard system for writing Kwakwala. Practical writing of Kwakwala today is typically done in the orthography promoted by the Multicultural Society, which largely resembles the Grubb orthography. Variants of this orthography allow for easier computer typesetting. For example, instead of marking adjective consonants with an apostrophe printed above the consonant, the apostrophe may be printed as a separate character following the consonant. Linguistic works on Kwakwala typically use an IPA or Americanist transcription. The following table compares different orthographic representations of some Kwakwala words. History and revitalization efforts. The use of Kwakwala declined significantly in the 19th and 20th centuries, mainly due to the assimilationist policies of the Canadian government, and above all the mandatory attendance of Kwakwaka'wakw children at residential schools. Although Kwakwala and Kwakwaka'wakw culture have been well studied by linguists and anthropologists, the efforts did not reverse the trends leading to language loss. According to Guy Buckholzer, the anthropological discourse had too often become a long monologue, in which the Kwakwaka'wakw had nothing to say. As a result of these pressures, there are relatively few Kwakwala speakers today, and most remaining speakers are past the age of child raising, which is considered crucial for language transmission. As with many other indigenous languages, there are significant barriers to language revitalization. However, a number of revitalization efforts have recently attempted to reverse language loss for Kwakwala. A proposal to build a Kwakwaka'wakw First Nations Center for Language Culture has gained wide support. A review of revitalization efforts in the 1990s shows that the potential to fully revitalize Kwakwala still remains, but serious hurdles also exist. The language is taught at the Multicultural Center in Alert Bay, British Columbia. In 2012, the New Yumbalese Cultural Center on Quadra Island received funding for shelving to display its collection of First Nations books for the benefit of Kwakwala speakers. Kwakwala mobile app and portal. A Kwakwala iPhone app was released in December 2011. An online dictionary, phrase book, and language learning portal is available at the First Voices Kwakwala Community Portal. Bibliography. Anderson, Stephen. Kwakwala Syntax and the Government Binding Theory. Syntax and Semantics, 16. Bark, Emin. Long vowels and stress in Kwakiutl. Texas Linguistic Forum, 2-9-19. Boas, Franz. Vocabulary of the Kwakiutl Language. Proceedings of the American Philosophical Society. 31, 34-82. Boas, Franz. Sketch of the Kwakiutl Language. American Anthropologist. 2, 708-721. DOI 10.1525 AA 1900.2.4.02 A00080. Boas, Franz. A revised list of Kwakiutl suffixes. International Journal of American Linguistics. 3, 117-131. DOI 10.1086 463,753. Bose, Franz. Notes on the Kwakiutl vocabulary. International Journal of American Linguistics. 6, 163-178. DOI 10.1086 463,790. Bose, Franz. Notes on some recent changes in the Kwakiutl language. International Journal of American Linguistics. 7, 90-93. DOI 10.1086 463,797. Bose, Franz. Jampolsky, L. and Boas, Harris, Zeleges. Grammar of Kwakiutl. Transactions of the American Philosophical Society. American Philosophical Society. 37, 201-377. DOI 10.2307 1,005,538. JSDOI 1,005,538. Davenport, Tristan. Alternations in place and laryngeality on the coda condition of Kwak'wala. Manuscript, University of California, Santa Cruz. Grubb, David. A Kwakiutl Phonology. MA thesis, University of Victoria. Grubb, David. A Practical Writing System and Short Dictionary of Kwak'wala. Ottawa, National Museum of Man. Strujic, Caro. Existential Faithfulness, A Study of Reduplicative TETU, Feature Movement and Assimilation. PhD dissertation, University of Maryland. Wilson, Stephen. Metrical Structure in Wakashan Phonology. Proceedings of the 12th Annual Meeting of the Berkeley Linguistics Society. 283-291. ZEC, Drager. Sonority Constraints on Prosodic Structure. Garland Publishing.